Welcome to this series on the Priest-Rabbi Dialogue. I am Rabbi Elliot Dorff, a professor of philosophy at American Jewish University.
And I'm Father Michael Wakefield at St. Francis de Sales Church in Sherman Oaks, a priest of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
The Priest-Rabbi Dialogue in Los Angeles began in 1973 as a result of the Nostra Aetate document of the Second Vatican Council. That document described the relationships between the Catholic Church and other religions, and in section 4 of that document, the Church talked about revolutionizing the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Jewish community. Among other things that it said was that only few Jews at the time of Jesus and no Jews since were responsible for the death of Jesus, that God does not renege on any of the covenants that he makes, and so that the covenant with the Jewish people, between God and the Jewish people, is still binding, just as it is between God and the Catholic community, and that there should be ongoing Catholic-Jewish dialogues that take place. And so the Priest-Rabbi Dialogue that began in 1973 in Los Angeles was one attempt to do that, and during this series we will be talking about some of the topics that we have discussed over the years in an attempt to try to get you as well, whether you be clergy or lay, to engage in these kinds of dialogues in your local community.
And the spirit of Cardinal Manning certainly is infused the Priest-Rabbi Dialogue from its beginning, because he was the one who was a priest of Los Angeles from 1934 to 1946, was made an auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles in 1946, and then was Bishop of Fresno for 67 to 69, when he returned in 1969 as coadjutor and then Archbishop of Los Angeles. So he was the one, as soon as he came to Los Angeles in 1969, started a number of changes. One of them being he had read Nostra Aetate, he had been at the council, he recognized Los Angeles has the second largest Jewish community in the country, and we need to take that document of the council and begin speaking with our Jewish brothers and sisters. So he started the Commission on Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs, and he's the one who started this dialogue with Monsignor Royal Vatican as its spokesperson. The very next year, after he came in Los Angeles in 1970, he appeared at the pulpit of Wilshire Boulevard Temple, because he and Rabbi Magnin were great friends, and at that time spoke of, now this is a time for us to now learn about one another, to speak to one another, to live in dignity and peace and harmony with one another, and so it's only by actually being together can we ever hope to realize these.
And Cardinal Mahoney after him, and now Archbishop Gomez have continued this, together with the representatives of the Jewish community, and it has been an ongoing and very fruitful kind of dialogue. In this case, the priests and the rabbis, but there have also been some lay dialogues along the way, and we would hope that would continue and that would actually multiply in the various locations in which people live.
Yes, because we're members of the Priest-Rabbi Dialogue, but there are also Jewish women and Catholic women who for decades have met together and spoke together and shared meals together, had prayed together, because they were taking, again, that document at the council saying, yes, the best thing we can possibly do is to actually be with one another. And Rabbi, if I could pick up on what you mentioned, just a couple of things from that document. There was for years the thought among Catholics that all Jewish people were responsible for the death of Jesus. That has a sad and tragic history and even worse consequences for the Jewish people. But that document faced that head on and said all of that must be eradicated, because there were some people in the temple leadership, and it was the Roman authorities that were responsible for the death of Jesus. And so it is now the Jewish people are the ones that are heirs of the covenant of Abraham. We are in a sense, their younger brothers and sisters, and so they're the ones that share in all of the blessings of the Lord God to Abraham and his descendants. And so we need to respect them and live in a state of dignity and peace with them.
And I must say that these dialogues have been based upon a mutual study of both of our religions. And it has enabled us to learn our own traditions just as much as we're learning the other tradition, because Diana Ack, a professor at Harvard, at one point said that if you know only one religion, you know none, right? Because you don't really understand how your religion is different from another. And if you assume, as we must, that there are all kinds of people in the world that are both smart and moral, but have decided to do things differently, then it's really important to know what other people have done and why they've done it that way. And it's also, in doing so, you begin to understand your own tradition. So the very first job of the priest-rabbi dialogue, given to us by Cardinal Manning, actually, was to investigate the history of the reproaches in the Catholic liturgy during the Lenten period, because he was convinced that they were originally anti-Semitic, and we had a professor of Catholic liturgy who came and talked to us about the history of the reproaches, and that it was originally anti-Semitic. And the priest, I still remember the priest around the table were absolutely abhorred by it, and said, I never understood it that way. I always understood that I was the one that was being reproached, and that I needed to change my own ways. And so what Cardinal Manning had us do was first of all, he said to the priests of the archdiocese that you don't have to say these things all together during the Lenten services, but that if you are going to use them, then you must start out with an introduction that we wrote in the priest-rabbi dialogue, talking about the fact that these were originally understood as anti-Semitic. We don't understand them that way anymore, and that these are addressed to each individual Catholic. That was the first thing that we did. And ever since, all of our dialogues have been based not only on how we feel about each other, and not only about our own experiences, but actually looking at the text of our tradition, and at the practices of our traditions, and learning from each other what they are and why they are the way they are.
And Cardinal Manning, when he spoke at the pulpit of Wilshire Boulevard Temple in 1970, reminded everyone in the temple, but the wider audience in Los Angeles, that the dialogue is never to be understood as a tool or instrument of proselytizing. Right. But rather it is that each of our communities believe that we have a wondrous gift and blessing given to us by the Lord God. Each of us treasure and value and esteem that. And so it is only by esteeming ours and others then can, as you say, reflect back on what we have to deepen our own understanding of who we are.
Right. And just for those of you to understand what this series is going to incorporate, we are going to be talking about prayer. We're going to be talking about the nature of the human being. We're going to be talking about what is bothersome about my own faith. We're talking about rituals. We're talking about the rationales for social action. And we're going to be talking about love, marriage, and family. So those are some of the topics that we're going to be covering in the future sessions of this string of programs about the priest-rabbi dialogue. These are obviously not the only topics that could be discussed or that we have discussed, but we have chosen those topics because we figure that we assume that you would be interested in them as well. And you will find out that in these programs, sometimes we share the exact same view, sometimes we don't. And one of the things that we learn from each other is what we share and why we share it. Sometimes we share the same thing, but for different reasons. And sometimes we have different views on things. And that's okay, as long as we understand what each of us says and why we say it.
And that we esteem each other's opinions and values of our respective traditions, and so helpful for the other to have a sense of what is the basis of the Jewish understanding of any of these topics, and then what is the basis of the Catholic understanding, because then if we understand that background, then it really helps us get a sense of what it is that the other believes, and then most importantly, why it is that the other one believes it.
Right. So one of the projects that we are not going to be discussing in this series, but that we worked on for a while, is a text that we share, namely the Sabbath commandment of the Ten Commandments. And it was a really interesting discovery on my part to find out that the way that Catholics understand that and the way that Jews understand it are radically different, right? Even though it's the exact same text that we share in common, right? On the other hand, other texts that we share that we have also studied in the Priest Rabbi Dialogue about the Abraham taking his son Isaac to be slaughtered. Right there we share very common commentaries about it in the Catholic world and in the Jewish world. So part of what this is going to be is a discovery of what we share and what we don't, and why we share what we share and why we don't share what we don't. We look forward to your participating with us in future programs of this series, and we really do hope that this stimulates you to have your own dialogues in your own local communities.